Good evening, everybody. It's a little late and it's a lot cold and it's raining. So that noise y'all hear is the rain hitting the roof. So I'll try to speak up and y'all bear with me. We have a guest in the house. That's right, 1984 TRX200. I know. It's got four wheels and it seems to be a pattern here lately. Three-wheelers are getting hard to find. But junky first generation four-wheelers are falling out of the trees here lately. I have two of them. Actually, the other one is not a TRX200. I'll tease you with that. But it's a very, very early bike. I had to check this one out myself. This is an 84. My understanding, it's a one-year only bike. That doesn't mean it's rare or expensive or clearly not expensive. But it means parts may be hard to get for if you just look at it on the surface. Here's what you want to know about this bike. Y'all notice any similarities going on here? That rear differential. It's the same as the 84 200 ES three-wheeler. They made 218,000 of those. Look at this engine. This engine is electric start, high-low and reverse sub-transmission, the exact same setup as an 84 200 ES Big Red. That's what we're comparing this to. But this bike is pretty different. Along with the custom mud flaps, which I have to say, out of all the fender extensions I've run across, and I have seen a lot of them, that's got to be the best one I've ever seen. That looks like a piece of floor mat that's been cut down and then bolted into place. And I mean bolted into place. You weren't shooting through that. But anyways, that's pretty good. Someone has taken the starter out of it. Now I just dragged this bike in. As you know, that's how I find them. I did put air in the tires and they're holding. But other than that, that's all I know. And so we're gonna do a will it run on this bike and kind of hopefully encourage y'all to maybe go out and bring one of these old beater bikes out of the woods and see what you can make some noise with it, you know. So we've got a set of aftermarket fenders. Man, it's a shame they faded out. If they'd have just parked this underneath a pole barn somewhere, them things look incredible. Look at them. there ain't a nick or a scratch or, oh well, okay, they're nicked and scratched, but they're not broken, okay? All right, they're not broken. Seat is, you know, been convertible a little bit there. It's missing about a ½ inch of its foam, maybe an inch, but it's even. It's nice and even. Gas tank's here. Yeah, it's here. Gas tank's there. Fender, we popped a tree here. We got some rivets. Did some rivet work there. Maybe worked on a skyscraper somewhere. You know, rivet the metal back together. But you know, look, it's solid. It ain't moving. It's for what it is, it's a fine repair. Now I'm teasing. I mean, it's an 84, y'all. It's 40 years old, 39 years old. But the real reason I'm interested in this bike is because it has the one thing that the 84 Big Red, which is what that is, sorry, it's not finished, I've been busy, doesn't have, and that's rear suspension. Even though it shares the exact same rear end, that solid housing, the drive shaft closed loop drive line, it has rear suspension, y'all. And it works. So follow me here. The Big Red had terrible front suspension. And the first thing I do to them when I get them is I put a 200M front end underneath them. That takes care of the front. That's the best suspension aside from a sports suspension. I'm not gonna cut up a 200X to fix a Big Red. That's just like moving backwards. But a 200M is a great front end. The one thing that bike is missing over there is rear suspension. It's the one thing this four-wheeler has is rear suspension. It's the exact same engine, drive line, and rear axle. Now I haven't taken any measurements off of it. I'm gonna tell you just by a calibrated eyeball, it looks a little longer to me from the center of the engine to the center of the axle. I have not put a tape on it. There may be something else different in there. Maybe that swing arm's a little longer, maybe the drive shaft's a little longer, but the two end pieces are the same. The motor and training's the same and the rear axle's the same. Then you kind of open up a whole world of possibilities. So today we're going to do a will it run. We're going to try to get this TRX200 to run, and what we find out on that will it run will decide if we cut it up or not. And I don't like cutting it up. Y'all know that's one of my pet peeves, is I don't like cutting a bike up. But you know, it's something to be said about using what you have laying around the shop too. Let's get started, and I'm just going to kind of briefly go over everything I do. And if you have a bike that doesn't run, possibly you can do the same thing too and fix yours. That's what the channel's about. It's not about me doing it. It's about me showing you how to do it, and you doing it, and you fixing your bike, and you keeping your bikes running. That's what this channel is about, and that's all it's about. So let's do this. This bike has electric start, but the starter's pulled out of it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of I'm gonna stack the deck against me. I could just throw a starter in there and a jump pack on it and boom, and find out if we had spark or not. But I'm not gonna do that, because there's a lot of bikes out there that don't have electric start. And for that reason, I'm gonna try to get this without the electric start. So the first thing I like to do when I get a bike in the shop is, just as I did just a moment ago, is assess the bike. Take a look at it. See what's here, what's missing, what's not supposed to be here. That's not supposed to be here. So we may have our work cut out for us. This is a fuel line. It goes to a fuel filter. It goes to another fuel filter. It goes to a carburetor. It goes somewhere. I don't know where it goes. So let's find out. We got us a bucket. I'm getting my drill out. Most of these bikes, you know, a lot of people ask me, well, what kind of tools do I need to start off with? You know, a basic set of hand tools, and what I mean by that is a ratchet set. A ratchet set, some decent screwdrivers. You may want to look into getting some of the JIS screwdrivers. You hear the guys talking about. You know, be cautious when you're looking, you know, over these things. So our seat pan is actually pretty good. So there's value here. Even on a bike as bad as this one, somebody needs that seat pan. You can buy a replacement foam for that, more than likely, and you can fix that seat if you needed it. But people ask me, you know, I'm just getting started, what kind of tools do I need? You know, I want to work on bikes. And I tell people, you know, you just need a basic set of hand tools. A cordless drill is very handy. The biggest problem you're going to run into, more than likely, is coming behind somebody else that didn't use the right tools. It's 14 millimeter. You're going to need a 10, a 12, and a 14 millimeter 90% of the time. That's just the tools. That's the size of the bolts that these bikes are put together with. It's become the standard. Even if you're into American cars, 10 millimeter is really it's the go-to fastener. So already right out of the gate, we got a fuel line that doesn't belong here. These two bolts, you should be able to look at and go, okay, something's not right here. This one was a 10, that one is a 12. So clearly one of them is wrong. And I can tell you that more than likely the 12 was wrong. We're missing some bolts up here. All right, now that all holds this front end together. What I'm trying to do is I would like to take this gas tank out, and not because I want to save it, because I can see through it. There's no point in really trying to save it. I just want to get it to a point where I can see the engine. I can get to the spark plug easily, just to make my life a little easier. Now Honda has a process. There's generally two hooks, two rubber mounts on the front of the frame, and that's what the tank engages into generally on this era of bike. And then there's one or two bolts in the back, and that is exactly how this one was put together. Y'all tell me. That'll work. We got some galvanized sheet metal with some self tappers run through there. And yeah, let's see. I might have had my Wheaties this morning. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's not gonna hold any fuel. That's bad. Bad. If you do have one of these, don't you know, don't just give up. There's so many of these parts that do interchange with the 84. That if you have a driveline motor problem, you could certainly find the parts to fix it. If you need a starter or a coil, or I mean, a head, a piston, you know, any of that, ignition system, any of that could work. Now I'm looking in here just because. All right. Actually, you know, we've seen a lot worse on this channel. That's actually, I mean, it's just going to fall apart if I touch it. But we're 5 or 8 years before this thing falls apart the rest of the way. We are ahead of schedule. I can hear the slide moving back and forth in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the top here to it. It's loose, so someone's already been here, more than likely. It's a key-in carburetor. You can tell that because it says key-in on the side of it. All right, so what we've got here, if you look really close, you've got a varnish. It smells terrible. It's old gas. It's sticky. It's almost like a thin honey is what it is. And what that is the gas is just congealed and broken down. Here we verify that our throttle on our thumb works, and it works very smoothly considering. I mean, so that stickiness, hard accelerator was the varnish causing this carburetor to slow down. So that's good that we found that out. Had you sprayed carb cleaner in here and that would have been stuck in the wide open position, and you had gas on it hooked up, you know, you can have a runaway real quick. I'm a big fan of just, you know, your inexpensive carb cleaner. That's probably way too much, but we're not ready to start it yet, so it'll evaporate before we get to we could get to that point. You see the needle, it's got a yellow tint to it, and that's just that gas varnish. I'm sure the bottom of the bowl of this thing is just slam full of it. You know it is. But we're not gonna mess with that. What we wanna do is we wanna try to bust it off and see if we've got, you know, if it'll run. You know, why did it die? A lot of this for me is the detective work. It's trying to figure out what was the last hurrah. You know, this bike's not covered in mud. A lot of these bikes I pull out that are just slam full of mud, and the reason is because that's where it's died, and that's where they left it. You know, yeah, they might have drug it home, but because it didn't run, nobody cared enough about it to wash it off. This bike looks like it was just parked. It looks like it was parked on the side of a barn somewhere or behind somebody's house, and it was just left, and left for a very long, long time. It doesn't have any brakes. It doesn't have any levers. It wasn't safe to ride when they were riding it, more than likely. I mean, the levers are completely broken off, so that didn't happen. That's not a result from the bike sitting. This is, the repairs are old. It wasn't in a crash and then stopped running. This just died. This probably got parked for a season, you know, a period of time. They went back out to it, it was dead, and they said, you know, I'm not fighting with that thing no more. The first thing I always look for is spark. I don't care what the seller told you, spark is everything. You can, it takes 4 things for an engine to run. So I think spark's the hardest to get, so I always go after it first. I do it like I was taught, and that's what I want to teach y'all, is it's not difficult. It just takes, you know, dedication and want to. So we've got an aftermarket coil flopping around here. This is not the factory coil, and the plug is not hooked up. So maybe somebody was looking for spark. You know, maybe somebody watched a video, Harvey Spooner video, and they were out here trying to find spark. And if that's what they were doing, that's great. So here's our plug. This is what it looks like. It's pretty bad. I'm gonna go run it on a wire wheel. Now that plug may work and it may not, but now we're giving it a fighting chance. It's not covered up in 40 years of carbon. We're gonna do everything we can to try to hear this bike run. And so just as I've always done in videos past, I've got now remember, this is an aftermarket coil. The coil is normally up on, hooked to the frame. This one's dangling loose, but we're just going to try to see what we have. We're not going to throw parts at this. Now the ignition, this is not the factory ignition. It's engaging and making the connection like it should. So I'm going to believe that that's working, and I'm going to believe that some of this other stuff is hooked up, and I'm just going to go for it. All right, I don't see any spark. All right, I've got another used plug, just came out of another bike. We're just gonna check it and see what we have here. All right, no spark. So, what we want to verify at this point is what component is bad. Now, I like to go back and I start with whatever's been changed by the previous owner. As a general rule, that's where I find the most mistakes. Now, because I had a 84 come in one time and didn't have a rotor in it, we're going to check that too. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go and you want to check your compression. So anything below 80 is just, throw in the towel. You need a top end. You need rings, and you need a valve job. So let's see. When you do this, a couple things you want to make sure you have right. You want to make sure that the choke is off. That means the butterfly is open. Throttle is completely open. You want as much air going into the engine as possible. I like to give a motor like this, pull start, a fair shake. And so that's about 5 good pulls. All right, well, that is very, very encouraging. That's very encouraging. Okay, I'm gonna try to find some springs. We're gonna have to put some springs on that rotor. Otherwise, it's not going to stay in time. It may hit once, backfire and stop. Let me see what I've got in the toolbox. If I have to, I'll go out to the boneyard and grab some springs off another bike, and we'll see if we can make some smoke. All right, so I'm gonna give you a little recap. I ended up calling it a night. I did not finish this last night. Put all the cards on the table. I've got 2 hours into this bike, and it's 2 hours well spent. It's a refresher for me, because depending on where the problem is, your diagnosis strategies might need to change. So we got spark, and I told you that's always the biggest hurdle for me is to get spark, maintain spark. I'll give you a quick overview on how we did that. I use a test light. I come in and I take a test light and just some basic tools that you would have, and I insert it right here next to coming out of the stator. It's the black wire with the red tracer. Once I verified that we had power there, I did a trick that I've told y'all about, but I've never really showed you. I disconnected the entire harness from the handlebars because I felt what I was experiencing was a bad switch, either the kill switch or the switch itself. As we see, this is a homemade switch here, and these switches do fail. It doesn't happen all the time, but they do fail. So in kind of a, I gotta tell you, in kind of a hurry, I just disconnected everything. No wires were cut and no wires were damaged. But what I'll tell you you can do is if you take the red wire and loop it back into the harness right here, real close, get it to focus. This is my red wire, my yellow wire with the red tracer, and then the other yellow wire with the red tracer. This is what goes to the key. Basically, we've just hot wired the bike. With that being done, we had spark. I ran a compression test. You saw that 147, I believe. Now, I think that compression's reading a little high. I think this bike's stock is 150. I can't believe, as bad as it looks, that it doesn't have more wear on the motor. So I'm gonna say that maybe my gauge is reading a little high. I checked it 3 times. Each time it was within a pound of 147. That's pretty impressive. Anything over 110 at this year model, 1984, is good. So we've got spark. It did not hit off of a little starter fluid. I do have gas run to the carburetor. It still did not hit. The third step for me is timing. Once I verified spark, I know that fuel and air is taken care of. I want to verify, and compression has been tested. The next thing I want to check is the ignition. When is it firing? If it's not firing at the right time, it will never hit or never take off. That means we needed to come in and we need to open up it says the CDI cover, and I know that is confusing because it says CDI on it. This is the cover that sits here on the top of the 200cc engine. I pulled the cover, and here you would find the rotor and the pickup. Yeah, that was important. This little black box right here is your pickup, and then this is your rotor. I did take some sandpaper before I took this apart, and I cleaned the rotor, and I cleaned underneath the pickup. You see how it's shiny there? That little bar, that little minus, if you will, right across there, that's the pickup. This is the rotor, and this is where I found the next problem. When we first started, we didn't have spark, but now that we have spark, it's still not running. And so this was the second part. Part one, you can see that it was rubbing here, and you can feel it on my finger. It's rough. So that means that the pickup had been pushed down and was rubbing against this. This is the magnet side, and we see that there's filings on the back side of this, while the magnet is holding those filings there. So we're going to clean that up even more. And then in here, what you're going to find is a big mess on this bike. We're going to get it out. This should pull straight out. As you see, it's not. All right, so what we found out is the rotor and the pickup were just hammered in this bike. And it's beginning to find a trend here. This is probably the third 84, and I don't know why, because they're all the same. But anyways, this is the third 84 year model I have found where the centrifugal force, the springs have just deteriorated, the weights have slid out. This one, the carriage, if you will, that carries that mechanism was just really tough to get out. I had to use some special tools. Lightly, remember this is the end of the cam you're tapping on, but I had to spray it down with some PB Blaster and a little tap, and just work it. Honestly, it's taken me 15 minutes to get it off. This is what was bad. So what happened is these springs, they rust, they deteriorate, they break down, and you see how all of these parts have kind of an orangey red tint to them. Most of this is aluminum, except for those springs are spring steel. And as they break down and deteriorate, you start getting this dust, if you will, like brake dust, except what it is, it's rust and friction and all the dust that's moving around inside. So if you do open up your cover and you see that the inside of it is real orangey looking, like you see how orange the pickup is, okay? Now most of that's gonna wipe off. You see here, see that just wipes right off. It's just like brake dust on the inside of your pickup. So if you start seeing, if you just pop the cover and you see that it's orange in here, be mindful that you are fixing to have some problems in here with the weight slinging out. Now I know this is dark in here. I'm sorry. You see that little pin, that little bitty pin way in the back? See how it sticks out from the side of the post? See, as I come around the camera, you see how that little pin sticks out? All right, that pin is very important. I can tell you that this motor is just off the top dead center because that pin is just past the 11 o'clock position. That pin needs to sit at 11 o'clock like this for it to be at TDC. That's just another way to tell. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run out to the boneyard. I'm not gonna bother you with that. And I'm gonna pick up another entire assembly. I'll just pull one out of another bike. I do not have any replacement springs. You can get them at Partzilla. They sell them in lots of 2 or a batch of 2, where I buy them. You may be able to find them on eBay, but I'll let you on a secret. Partzilla sells on eBay. So always look at the seller when you are on eBay, because you may find out that it's someone that you know, a reputable business, which is good. But the reason I say that is you can go to Partzilla directly, ship directly from them instead of going through eBay. And sometimes you will find incentives like free shipping or 10% discount or something like that. So always pay attention to that when you're out shopping for parts. Out of all the nuts and all the bolts on the bike, I'm gonna tell you the one that I find stripped the most out of all of them, and that's a lot, they're these right here. For whatever reason, I don't know if it's the chrome finish on them, made them soft, and that's what keeps this. If you start getting oil out of this case, if it starts leaking down here, there's a seal that your cam passes through. All right, we moved over to the table, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna check this carb. One of the things I like to try to do is find rust on the carburetor. No, that's not one of the things I like to try to do. I don't think this carburetor's taking fuel. I opened up the drain to push through fuel through it, and nothing came out. And so that tells me that a couple of things. One, it could be that the bowl is just full of sediment. Or two, it could be that the float is not allowing fuel to come in. So one of those two things more than likely is the culprit. We're gonna find out here in just a second. As rusty as this bike is, it could be that it's just full of rust. I mean, we saw the gas tank. You could literally stick your finger through it. And you know that some of that fuel had rust in it, and the fine sediments got down into the carb. There you go. So let's see what, oh yeah, there you go. How's that? That's terrible. That I wouldn't have run either. That is awful. Look at the buildup in the bottom of this carburetor. I mean, you can just literally pull it out on a screwdriver. Look at that. That's pure and tea rust right from the gas tank. So I'm gonna turn the parts washer on. All right, so here's a little trick. I always find that the idle jet on one of these carburetors is always the one that's plugged up. And I have seen them get plugged up to where I didn't think I would ever get them out. And so here's a trick. I take a cordless drill. I chuck up the idle jet in a cordless drill. And then I told y'all earlier that I use the wires. This is a cleaning kit for a torch set for cutting metal. And you can sit here with a drill and you can insert this in, and you can feel it literally start to push through the debris that's in there. And as you run it back and forth, it's running that knurled surface through the jet. Now I will tell you that if you were to sit there for too long, you would actually change the size of the jet. And so that was part of the problem with this bike, among many. And so I'm going to give you a rundown on everything that was wrong with it. But now we've got a clean idle jet. This carb is an original carb to the bike. It's probably set up exactly like it was supposed to. 2 1/4 turns out on your air mixture screw is a good starting point. You will fine tune it from there. And then about 2 turns out on your fast idle screw is a good base or start for both of those. All right, so we've got our needle and our seat here for our inlet, for our float. Piece of emery cloth or a Scotch-Brite pad. This is rubber on some and it's metal on others. You just want to clean it up. And this is not the cleanest piece of Scotch-Brite pad, but it's the only one I could find. And I'm hurrying because the temperature is dropping outside. I know it's Florida, but we're gonna hit 30 tonight. And I don't want to be out here in this metal box. I call a shop at 30 degrees. You can see my breath and my hands just don't work as good as they used to when the temperature drops. So we're going to set this back up. This is our needle and our seat for our floats. This is what lets the fuel into the carburetor. This is an original key-in. This is one of those original parts that people actually, seek out. There's a lot of guys, Curtie over there at 223 Cycles, they this is their bread and butter. This carb right here. You can go on their website right now and buy a key-in carburetor, not a China carburetor, a key-in carburetor. And I just got off the phone with him, and he was telling me, and this is brand new, so I'll share it with you and I'll put it on the screen. When you get to checkout at 223cycles.net, if you put MRC Builds, capital letters, he'll get you 10% off. Now this is your oil drain for all of your 200cc bikes, even your 185s. It's 24 millimeter. It's down here on the left side. The case in the bottom. It's one of the few things that the lift table kind of gets in the way for. Behind this plug, it's the same size and it's actually the same plug as your valve covers. So if you break one of these and you've got a parts bike somewhere, you can rob one off of a valve cover if you have to. Behind this, you're going to find a thimble screen. It's going to look, so when I show it to you, you'll go, oh yeah, that's a thimble. And behind that, there's going to be a spring. So there's a cap. If you look close, you'll see that this oil is gray or tan in color. And that means that there's been water in it at some point in time. There's our spring. Be sure and put that back in. And then behind that, and it always gets stuck, there is a little thimble filter. And it gets plugged up, and they didn't have cartridges back then. They had wire. As you see, I'm going to pick the camera up here. You see that filter is looks just like a thimble. Looks like it'd sit on your thumb. But see the color of it? That's water that's got in the oil. We're going to leave this out, and we're going to take this out, and we're going to clean it up, and we're going to let that dry. All right, so I just let it in there for a couple of minutes, and I wiped it down with I've got a little paintbrush. If you're interested in a Sonic parts cleaner, they're actually pretty handy. Now they're not a cure-all. You just don't throw a part in there and walk away and come back, and it's perfect when you come back. This is the one I used. I'll tell you why I chose this one. It's 6 liter. It's big enough that you can actually put a brake housing or a brake drum in. I mean, it's big. It's 6 liters. I think it's like 12 by 14 or 12 by 16. It's a good sized tank. It really is. It gets hot, and like I told y'all before, I use the Simple Green industrial cleaner, and then I do a 50-50 mix, and I get, you know, quite a bit of time. It needs to be changed now. But I put that in there, and it's got a heater on this side, and this is your timer that you set, and I've got it turned off right now, otherwise the red lights would be on. But the reason I went with the dials versus the keypad is I've just seen too many keypads, cheap ones, and these are cheap, I'm not gonna lie to you. The keypad, even on the reviews, I see where they wear out, they quit working, and you can't really fix those because they're digital. These literally has a spring and a knob on the back of it, and if that were to go out, I would just go to a flip switch, and it would be on or it would be off. Because the timer, to me, I don't really use. I just need the heater and turn it on, walk away. So that being said, this is our part, and it cleaned up really good in there. Like I said, I've got a little parts brush that I sit there and wiped it off with, because this is really, really bad. There's still stuff. Just be careful with it, because it's just wire. It's about the equivalent, you know, to some screen door, you know, on the front of your house. If y'all live in the South like me, you probably grew up with the screen doors. And it's funny, they don't have those anymore, do they? I'm trying to think. No, I don't think new houses have screen doors. That's a shame. How many of y'all remember a screen door slamming? Come in and out, wham! And your mom would be like, quit slamming the door. Like, you got a spring on it that big. That's what's going to happen when you let go of it. It's going to slam. Good memories. Okay. So there we go. That's our filter, and it's clean. It's ready to go back in. It's the first K&N. It's reusable. So we're going to put this right back in just like it came out. Now remember the order here, fellas. It's easy to get confused when you walk away from it. It's filter coming out towards you, and then the spring is going to go over the top of it, and then the cap. Did y'all see the oil that come out of that thing? Check this out. Oh my goodness. And I got to thinking about it, that the starter is missing on this bike. That's why I've been pull roping it. So if they rode it with no starter in here and splashed water up in there, there ain't no telling how much water got up in there. But we still did a compression check on it. You know, you would have thought that would have wiped it out. Now, I am going to say that the bottom end of this motor probably shows a lot of wear because of the water that's been in there. And based on that oil, it hasn't had a lot of lubrication. So is it rebuilt? No, it's not rebuilt. Are we going to make it run? Yeah, we're going to make it run. We're going to make some noise tonight. there you go, y'all. 1984 TRX200. She runs, she drives. She's got 2 ranges, forward ranges and reverse. This is the OG four-wheeler. This is it. This is the very first one. This is 1984. It's that 3-wheeler with another wheel screwed on the front of it. It's exactly the same thing. If you see one of these are tanks. They are built to go and go and go. And they can be treated really, really bad and they'll still keep going. This front end, I mean, it's just so, it's built so overkill. Look at the size of the beam on that thing. But she needs a lot of work. She needs a lot of love. You could nitpick one of these things all night and have a lot of fun doing it. But the bottom line is it still runs, it still drives, it's still worth something. It would still take you around the yard. Now on this one, it's 1 year only. You're gonna probably have a hard time. If you were going to rebuild this bike and make it really nice, you know, but on a budget, you could paint these fenders and they would look really, really good. Scuff them, prime them, paint them. You're gonna need the upper part. There's a plastic part that goes up and over the tank. You're gonna want that to look good, and you're gonna need a tank. Unfortunately, these tanks are metal. I don't know if there's a plastic alternative that will fit that. I have the seat for this, you saw it. It doesn't look very good, but seat covers are about 50 bucks. So, you know, you could get some vinyl from a fabric store and wrap it yourself. It's got a plastic pan. We talk about the importance of a plastic pan on the bottom. And, and you could be riding. Apparently they did. Apparently they went riding. But again, this was to show you, you can hotwire one of these bikes. There's nothing hooked up to this wiring harness and she still runs, okay? Every bit of it is taken apart. What you wanna do is you wanna loop the yellow with the red tracer back to the yellow with the red tracer again. That completes the circuit. And then to ground it, you wanna ground the harness. I have a ground running here to the coil. And that way to shut it off, if it would have run away from me, I could have just pulled the ground off of this. It would have ungrounded the harness, which would have shut the whole bike off. That's it. Will it run? 2022 200 TRX is in the books. We're done with it. I don't know what we're gonna do with it, but she runs, she drives. It doesn't smoke. It doesn't knock. Okay. As always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I'm gonna shut the shop down and I'm gonna go inside where it's warm, and we'll pick this back up later. So take care. Bye-bye.